he said a lot of things that people didn't understand, that made the religious leaders mad, because he was kind of changing the paradigm of what people understood about religion and what it meant to be a follower of God and live a kingdom life. And so no doubt the people were asking, well, who is this guy? Where did he come from? Who has given him the authority to say these things that he said? And so, knowing that, of course, Jesus knows everything, but chapters 8, 9, and 10, what we see is a progression of miracles. And no doubt there's a reason Matthew put this in the succession that he did, and that was because these people have these questions, where did the authority come from? And then, bam, Jesus starts doing these miracles and says, this is the authority. I can do these things, therefore I am God. I have the authority to forgive people. I have the authority to say the things and set religion straight. And so this is what we see Matthew writing. He writes about 9 of these miracles. Now there was thousands, literally thousands. In fact, in one passage in Matthew, I believe it says that Jesus healed them all. That multitudes came to him, and he healed them all. So there's not even a number. We read a few in the Bible, and we think, wow, these are the special ones. But he just healed everybody. And but Matthew records 9 of them, and it's a very strategic 9. Last time we were together, we talked about the first one. You remember what that was? Yeah, the leper. It was the leper. We talked about that. Well, Matthew writes these in groups of 3. So we have 3 miracles and a response. 3 miracles and a response. 3 miracles and a response. And so tonight we're going to talk about the other 2 in this first section here. This is what we're going to see in Matthew chapter 8. There were a lot of things that, a lot of diseases and stuff that people dealt with during biblical times like this. In fact, the average age, I think, of the average age that people would live to is just in their 30s. And it was largely due to just the enormous number of diseases that were prevalent during the time and a lack of medical sophistication, or whatever, lack of medicine, lack of doctors who knew what to do. And so, it would be terrifying to live in that age when, hey, we're getting to be 35, and the time's coming to the end, They had, here's just some diseases that the Bible mentions. Atrophy, which is like muscular dystrophy, a degenerative muscle issue. Blindness, which had a lot of different causes. Boils, deafness, dropsy, which is a retention of body fluid. There are mute people. Dysentery, which is a bacteria or worms in the digestive tract. Epilepsy, which causes seizures. Bleeding, which like fibroid tumor type things of bleeding. Speech disorders, inflammation, tumors. There was more. But to kind of sum that up, it gave people no hope. I mean, you were just waiting around to see what was going to get you, And so it was fearful, and this is why we see Jesus coming in and literally healing thousands of people. It must have been, obviously it was miraculous, but I mean, can you imagine living in a society or culture like that, and somebody comes in and they start healing you? It must have, I don't know how somebody could live in that time and maybe have friends or family healed and not believe in Jesus. Sit there and watch somebody's limb reconstruct, and you knew them from birth, and they didn't have an arm, now I have an arm. And how would you not believe that Jesus is God? There were some, though, but others followed Jesus. I don't know, kind of crazy, but it's so different than the so-called healers of today, who are just charlatans. You can see them on TV. Who's that showing us a video, Ron? Another warning up here.
Greg.
Yeah, Greg Wilhite, the TV evangelist. convince people of some vague, unprovable disease, and then they heal it. And anyway, you watch it on TV, don't. But Jesus healed completely and was instantaneously with just a word or touch. He just healed. He was sympathetic and compassionate. There was never any rehabilitation. You know, he didn't say, "Hey, get up and walk. All right, now you need to go rehab and learn all this." You know, it was instant. He knew what to do, and he just made it happen. Jesus healed organically. He would, you know, like I said, he would reform arms or legs and eyes. You know, people that were blind could see. Anyway, and to put a cherry on top of all that, he would raise people from the dead. I mean, get out of town, right? I mean, that's, you think just fixing the physical body, but they could be totally dead, and he would raise them. So, in the history of all the world, nothing like this had ever happened, of course. So anyway, we had the first miracle, which was the healing of leprosy from this wretched man that the Bible that Matthew records. So we move on from him, and let's see, where did I say Matthew 8? Genesis, okay, there we are, verse 5. So we move on from this wretched leprous man, and now we're going to look at somebody that is more of a respected type person, interestingly. And verse 5, we're going to read about him as the centurion, and well, it's actually a servant. Let's read this, and we're going to look at a parallel passages in Luke chapter 7. But it says, "Now when Jesus had entered Capernaum, a centurion came to him, pleading with him, saying, 'Lord, my servant is lying at home paralyzed, dreadfully tormented.' And Jesus said to him, 'I will come and heal him.' The centurion answered and said, 'Lord, I am not worthy that you should come under my roof, but only speak a word, and my servant will be healed. For I am also a man under authority, having soldiers under me. And I say to this one, go, and he goes, and another, come, and he comes, and to my servant, do this, and he does that.' So when Jesus heard it, he marveled and said to those who followed, 'Assuredly, I say to you, I have not found such great faith, not even in Israel. And I say to you that many will come from east and west and sit down with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the sons of the kingdom will be cast out into outer darkness. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth.' Then Jesus said to the centurion, 'Go your way, and as you have believed, so let it be done for you.' And his servant was healed at that same hour." And now flip over to Luke chapter 7. We'll read there a little bit. So we've got this centurion that is a centurion typically was despised. And I was going to start the lesson off tonight by asking you a question, but I forgot to do that. So I'll ask it now. Here in Ozark, I know we're Christians and we don't despise anybody, but who would you say that others that aren't Christians despise here in Ozark? Who are the despicable people in Ozark? You drive, or your other people, drive down the road and you see him and you just go, are there people like that in Ozark? That other people do that too? I don't know. You know, obviously there were people like that here in New Testament times, and the centurion is typically one of them.
People get close.
Amen. That's the answer right there. They're wearing panther shirts.
Sometimes people despise people that are in authority and like authoritative positions, like police officers.
Yeah, and there's a trend that way too.
Yeah.
You know, my brain immediately went to like homeless, you know, walking up and down the street, somebody that's stinky or you just don't want to be around them. They're begging from you. You know, everybody hates somebody who begs from you. And I didn't think about police officers.
Well, you said
mean, they hated him so bad they wouldn't even go near him. They wouldn't go on, in their land. They would bypass their land and take an extra day of travel just because they didn't want to be near him, because it was just, they didn't like him. And the centurions tended to be that way for a couple of reasons. One is that they were Gentiles, okay? But they were Gentiles who lived like in a small town, and the Roman government had hired them to be officers of 100 people to maintain control of that area. Okay, so, and then typically, since they were living there and they were Gentiles, they also more than likely were Samaritans, which meant that their family had intermarried with Samaritans. So they were Gentiles, they were Samaritans, they had sold out to the Roman government. They were hated and just despised. If you were a good Orthodox Jew, you had no place, in your life for a centurion. It was just, they were bad. We've got this centurion. Now, oddly enough, every centurion that's written about in the New Testament is written about in a good light. Isn't that odd? The Jews hated him, but we have the centurion at the cross, we have this centurion, and we have Cornelius who gets saved. At least those three. And, wow, isn't that interesting? So it's almost like Jesus is saying, hey, I'm going to have these guys write about these centurions, but it's going to be in a favorable light. And, that's kind of cool. So we've got this centurion here in this passage. And most commentators believe that all three of these miraculous things that we're reading about happened on the same day, and after Jesus had finished at the Sermon on the Mount. And so, in Luke chapter 7, starting in, I think it's about verse 6 or so. Let's see. No, just right at the start. Matthew kind of goes straight for the facts, and we have this parallel passage in Luke that gives us some additional information. And Luke tells us that the centurion didn't actually go to see Jesus, but he sent some Jewish people with the message. Right? Now, you got to wrap your brain around, who's doing what and what kind of nationality, if you want to call it that, they are. So we have this centurion, Samaritan, Gentile, Roman guy, and he is sending these Jewish elders to Jesus to request Jesus to heal his servant, which we're going to find out in a minute is a child. All right? These things really aren't matching up very good. Okay, but there's some reasons why this is going on. So, in Luke chapter 7, verse 6, it says, "Then Jesus went with them," talking about these Jewish messengers, basically. "And when he was already not far from the house, the centurion sent friends to him, saying to him, 'Lord, do not trouble yourself, for I am not worthy that you should enter under my roof. Therefore I did not even think myself worthy to come to you, but say the word, and my servant will be healed.'" So, the word servant here in Luke means bond servant. And Matthew chapter 8, verse 8, Matthew uses a word that means a boy or a child. So more than likely this was kind of a houseboy, that was living there. And the centurion was having compassion on him. He wanted him healed, and he's humbling himself before Jesus to get this done. So the centurion has this houseboy, and look at what we've seen about the centurion. He cares for his servant, which was countercultural, because slaves were no more than talking tools to people back then. Okay, but he's concerned about him. He's having compassion. He's humble. What did he say, or what message is he sending to Jesus that shows his humility? Yeah. Look at that. Here's a centurion, man. I'm boss of 100 people, and I'm not worthy to have this man, this Jew, come under my roof. So he's very So, we have these Jewish leaders beseeching Jesus on his behalf. Now, why would a group of Hebrews help a centurion? Does that seem odd to you? I mean, you've got Jewish leaders, probably the leaders of the synagogue in that little town, and this centurion's wanting some Jewish assistance. Why would these guys go help him? Well, let's read. Okay, in Luke chapter 7, verse 4 and 5, go up just a little bit. It says, "And when they came to Jesus, they begged him earnestly, saying that the one for whom he should do this was deserving, for he loves our nation and has built us a synagogue." Okay. So this centurion is helping the community. He has compassion on the Jews. He recognizes the religion, and apparently he's a believer. We don't know that for sure, but he sure shows a lot of signs of it. He's very giving and loving to the people there. So, maybe a financial motive, but this Gentile soldier realizes he's dealing with the covenant people who worship the one true God, and he's making an investment in it. And another thing to note is that these Jewish elders knew that Jesus could heal. Okay, the religious leaders of the day didn't care for Jesus very much, and but here we have these men coming in, and they realize that Jesus can do this. Okay, so they didn't believe he was God, but they thought he could do this stuff. So anyway, this guy knew the centurion knew Jewish ceremonial laws and would not think to ask Jesus to break them, which would include coming under his roof. Okay, Jews just didn't go into Gentiles' houses. You just didn't do that. And so this centurion wasn't about to ask him to do something because he knew the laws and didn't want to put Jesus at risk to break those laws. So this centurion was quite a guy, and Jesus acknowledges that there in Luke chapter 7, down in verse 9. He says, when Jesus heard these things, he marveled at him and turned around and said to the crowd that followed, "I say to you, I have not found such great faith, not even in Israel." So to make Jesus marvel, wow. I mean, he must have been amazing. His faith had to have been amazing to make Jesus marvel like that. And then with the passage we just read in Matthew that talked about there will be people from the east and the west sitting down, and what that's talking about is Gentiles. Okay, Jesus is explaining to the people listening that there's going to be Gentiles that come and sit at the table with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and that the people of Israel, or the house of Israel, will be cast into outer darkness. Okay, he's simply telling you, look, if you're not on board, if you're not believing in that I'm God because of these miracles, you're going to be cast out. And it's these Gentiles that are going to come, the Gentiles that are believing. So the centurion was acknowledging Jesus' authority, and he knew authority because he was in an authoritative position. So he understood what authority was, and that's what he went on to explain that. So he said, "You don't have to come; you just say the word." And I know you just say the word. Boy, that's faith. Let's see, I said all that. The idea that Gentiles would sit in the kingdom with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob was impossible in the eyes of religious leaders. So, anyway, in the midst of this amazing miracle, Jesus preaches this mini sermon about the importance of faith in the kingdom. And he finishes up in, let's see, I'll jump back to Matthew 18, or Matthew 8, and down in verse 12, I think. So he gives his little mini sermon, and then he heals the boy, down in verse 13. Jesus said to the centurion, "Go your way, and as you believe, so let it be done for you." And his servant was healed that same hour. But can you imagine the joy of the family and this boy being healed, and the belief of the centurion? I mean, just to finish out this chapter, or this section, I'm sorry, verse 14 and 15, this is the third miracle that Matthew records in this section. This is the miracle of healing Peter's mother-in-law. It says, now when Jesus had come into Peter's house, he saw his wife's, talking about Peter's wife's mother, lying sick with a fever. So he touched her hand, and the fever left, and she arose and served him. Okay, so more than likely, Jesus was staying with Peter. It just seems to be the consensus of theologians that was kind of, Jesus was from Nazareth, but Nazareth turned their back on Jesus. And so he kind of made his home in Capernaum. And more than likely, he stayed with Peter. So Peter was the closest disciple with him. And in Peter's home, we know that he had a wife and he had a mother-in-law. Okay, so, and also Andrew lived there with him. So, it's getting pretty full. But anyway, they may do what we do nowadays. You go to synagogue and you get through, and what's the first thing you want to do? Go eat, right? Go to the restaurant, get something to eat. You come home and get something to eat, and mother-in-law is sick. What's up with that? We want nothing to eat. So, here we have Jesus healing her so she can fix himself, apparently. But, Jesus takes her by the hand, and the fever immediately leaves her. So there we have it. Jesus healed a leper, okay, the nastiest person that you can think of, and he healed a Gentile person who was the next nastiest person, and then a woman, right? So there seems to be a reason that Matthew records these three, and it's because these are the outcasts of society, and Jesus spent time and effort healing these outcasts. And as I read through this, and I think about the people of Ozark and who are the outcasts, and I think of Wade Powell with the Bridge Ministry, and I'd say that at least they probably feel like outcasts. We may not feel that way about them, but who are the outcasts? And do we have the same heart of compassion that Jesus had as he was healing these people that every Jew in the area would have said, just get rid of them. They're nasty people. We don't even want them around. And here Jesus is spending his time and love and compassion on them. So anyway,